a lot of worry comes either from regret or it comes from the future anticipation of regret.
Regret for something you did, and worry is the anxiety of something that hasn't yet come.
Yeah. And they're just connected.
Yeah. And we're in between it.
Welcome back to In Residence. I'm Keith.
And I'm Laura.
Hey, Laura.
Hey, Keith.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm well. What's going on?
I was trying to think, what did I do this week? We had a date night on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Just fun. That was something didn't I tell you on Monday? I'm like, I want to have a date night on Wednesday.
Yeah, and then I totally forgot. And
Oh, did you?
You messaged me on, I think, Wednesday. You ready for a date night? And I'm like, yeah. That was a good surprise.
I didn't know you forgot. I wore a cute dress. I was like, all right.
Well, I forgot about it. I remembered you telling me.
Okay.
I'm like, oh, that's right. She mentioned that. Yeah, I had dinner.
We also had a family day out. We went to the Minnesota Yacht Club Festival. Had a huge lineup of different artists. So we saw Chili Peppers. We saw Offspring, Hippocampus. Who else did we see?
Trombone Shorty was there.
Yeah. Hold Steady was there. I have a little bit of regret for not seeing Gwen Stefani and Alanis Morissette.
Yeah, the night before. That would have been fun.
You and I should have gone.
Yeah, I would have been I was so worn out last night.
I was too.
But I was still buzzing from the show. We were up really late. And so then I kind of like overslept and had a pretty lethargic morning.
I slept until 10 a.m.
Yeah.
I don't think we got to bed until 2.
So it was fun to go see some live music, but it was a lot. And I'm like, okay, yeah, there's a reason I don't go to these very often. Try to look for some more smaller, more intimate shows. Like we used to go to, at least we're outside and fun to be with both the kids and enjoy the atmosphere a little bit and see them enjoy the music.
Yeah. And it was really pretty because it was in St. Paul, Harriet Island. So you could see the skyline and the cathedral in the background. And it was just right on the Mississippi. It was pretty.
Yeah. Last week after we were done recording, you had an idea for something to talk about.
Oh, I'm forgetting now.
Well, I take notes.
I'm glad you do.
And you said maybe we could talk about spending less time worrying and more time going after what we want. The idea of focusing more on going after what you want versus worrying.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, that's interesting. But my first response is that sounds like we're maybe ignoring anxiety. And it prompted me to remember like a little note I wrote was like, when I feel anxious, it feels like an allergy and that people can't really see them. But when you have them, you can really feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And one disclaimer, right? We all worry about stuff, but if we can maybe find a way forward despite that discomfort, right? In a healthy way with support, let's turn and focus on what we want to go after and not let those things, if possible, stop us.
Yeah.
So that's where I was at. The other thing that came up in my head was leaders go first, right? Leaders take action and they take first steps, right?
Right. You're talking about you go first when it's scary and it's uncertain and it's taking courage. Leaders need to take that step. Yeah. So you're kind of saying that leaders have that role in overcoming that worry and that anxiousness.
I'm saying that a quality that I think defines leadership is finding a way forward, even if it's a hard decision.
Yeah.
You tend to weigh all the pros and the cons and think about, in your area, what are the mission, vision, values kind of stuff. And those things guide you forward. We've talked about when we make some hard decisions, usually the right decision feels a little harder and has a little discomfort with it. And that's kind of how we can tell that's signaling to us that we're making the right choice because it's not easy. We're not just getting what we want.
Yeah.
So I more want to get you talking because I think you have much more experience in knowing when it's time to push or move or keep going or when to pivot.
Sure.
I tend to look more for predictability and I kind of go with the flow is where I come from as a default. from my perspective, you're always a little more leaning into possibility and how can I create opportunity?
Yeah.
You, to me, seem a lot less hesitant to shake up the status quo. But that's just my perspective. It could still be really hard for you, but I see you kind of persevere in the face of those things, whereas I'm more of like, I'm going to wait and see how the dice shake out. And I'm going to be a little more passive, and I'm building the muscles and the strength to not be that way. But that's where I come to these decisions from is, well, I'm not quite certain, I'm going to stay safe over here and maybe it'll work out for me, but I'm not going to, I don't maybe take as much action.
Right. Yeah. I mean, as a leader, I can see that path forward and kind of that, okay, this is where we could go. This is how we could build. I feel like I spend a lot of my time identifying what's possible with those around me and then finding ways to traverse that journey. Because even if I'm ready and I can see it of where we could head, oftentimes people aren't always ready to do that. And so I'm always finding kind of the way of how do I not just go out and be like, woohoo, we're doing this.
Right.
Right.
Because there's a team.
Yeah, there's a team. And it's like, how do we get the team safely through this mountain passage together on the other side? So we're, still a team. But knowing that it's not an option to stay at base camp,
Then so now thinking about you personally, when you have decisions to make, you finished bottling your beer today, right?
I did. Thank you for helping me cap them.
Yeah. You just kind of leapt into that and figured it out. But there's other situations where you have decisions to make. Maybe you're trying to figure out, like, is this a dip or is this a dead end? And maybe I don't want to put any more of my energy into this and I'm ready to pivot. What does that feel like for you? Because I know, like, when I get that feeling, it's because I feel stuck. And that's finally the signal of like, oh, I should maybe change things.
It's hard because I don't know if you ever fully know. One personal example I've had recently, I was working towards and training for a 5K and I hurt my knee it was pretty bad. I was having a hard time walking on it. And I went through physical therapy and it's feeling better now. And I've asked myself a lot, am I a runner? Am I not? And I've decided I don't know if I'm ready to answer that question yet. But what I do know right now is that I'm going to be working on building strength in my hips, in my knees, in my quads to try and give myself a better opportunity to make that call. But I'm okay with that. I was having a real sense of loss when I couldn't continue doing my training because I was deep into it. And so I did have this real sense of loss. That sounds so silly, maybe, but it's kind of like a goal you've been working towards and you're just on the cusp of getting it. And then it just dissipates, right? Or just goes away. Sometimes you just try and find a different path forward on it. And it might not be the path that you think it's going to look like. Like right now I'm doing kind of like a strength routine 4 days a week. And I'm loving it, And so it's like, okay, this is just my current state right now. Maybe that leads back to running, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe it just leads to more lifting. I don't know. But I'm enjoying it. You know me really, really well. So I think it's interesting when you're saying kind of my words back to me from last time after we were like, oh, we should have talked about. But that worry can really take a lot of energy and space and time. Worry can take a lot of time. And I don't know if you worry as much as I do. It's not like a competition.
I think I worry so much that I forget that you also do.
Yeah.
And I think that's similar for both of us. And we're like, oh, okay, that's right. We're both always thinking and working on something in our head.
Yeah. Like I'm just I mean, even when I was young, I was just like a worry wart. Isn't that the saying?
Yeah.
Just a worry wart. And this might seem silly, but did I unplug the curling iron? Did I turn off the burner on the stove? Like I had to run back in one time last week to make sure I turned off the stove. I'm like, I know you did. You always do. But it's just that, well, if I don't, and then a towel falls on it, and it's just
And then you
I'm getting off
spiral.
track, right? Things spiral. That's not exactly what we're talking about, but just that idea of worry, and it's wasted energy.
Well, it can be.
True.
Right.
It can also help you anticipate pitfalls and danger.
Yeah.
Danger might be strong.
Well, I listened to Daniel Pink's The Power of Regret.
Mm.
So you got me the book.
Yeah, what did you think? I heard him do a keynote.
Yeah. And you got me a copy of the book signed by him. And
Got to meet him.
been sitting here, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to finally read/listen to it. Yeah, it's right here. That might be part of the reason why some of this is coming up. And I'm like, oh, this kind of ties into what I was reading. So yeah, The Power of Regret, how looking backward moves us forward.
Mm.
It was kind of tough to get into. It was fairly short, so I just powered through,
Yeah.
And there were some pretty good gems in there. And once they finally got to this chapter 13, it really resonated with me. And it was self-disclosure, how through writing or speaking, you can discover your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions versus constantly just thinking about them. And it clicked where I'm like, oh, no wonder I like to write, or I feel better after I write. I've always kind of written and minored in it, and been inclined towards writing more and more over the last year. So he's talking about either telling somebody about a regret or even writing about it, and how you kind of discover yourself, on the page, or talking with somebody that you trust, obviously. There were a couple things in there like that. It was kind of like affirmation of like, oh, that's right. Like the tools that I'm using are helping. And it can be tricky to find somebody that you trust to be able to talk to with stuff like that. So, obviously,
Yeah.
That's why I think writing is really great. It talks about how there's like a whole bunch of literature and stuff that backs up the fact that finding a way to get your thoughts and feelings down helps you process them. And then more so with the negative regrets, it really helps you not be stuck in like that anxiety and that worry of it. But it has the inverse effect. If you jot down all the happy things, it actually takes away some of the wonderment. You like document it too much, it kind of takes away some of the magic, is what what he's talking about. And I'm like, that's really interesting. Anyway, I'm rambling. One of the bigger things, besides the fact that writing is a really good tool for self-betterment, I think it's the term he used, that he's like, regret can make us better when we use our emotions as a signal for our thoughts. And when feeling is for thinking and thinking is for doing, regret can perform its decision-enhancing, performance-boosting, meaning-deepening magic. I think regret is one of those things that keeps me from choosing action because I don't want to regret my decision. I don't see that in you as much. You're like, oh, if it goes wrong, we'll just do it again.
Actually, I think sometimes I do the opposite because I think, well, I don't want to have a regret for not going after something I want.
Yeah, that powerful mindset.
Yeah.
I think I heard that the most from Gary Vee several years ago. And so I don't know if you remember this, but he would have like the wallpaper Wednesday, right? So you'd screenshot his Instagram or whatever,
Sure.
and then you could save that graphic for your phone screen or whatever. And one was regret is poison. Daniel Pink here is saying, he talks a lot about how people get like no regrets tattooed on them and stuff. And so I was kind of laughing because it was talking about people getting tattoos, which I have several tattoos, if you don't know me. So it kind of it's like, yeah, regret's poison. I'm not going to regret anything. And or no regrets means I'm not going to pay attention to those things, where he's talking about in this book, there's a power in it where it can propel us forward if we take a little bit of time to go a little deeper and see like what was happening there and why do we feel the regret that we're feeling. And there's a bunch of different kinds anyway.
To not just sit in the bad feelings of that regret.
Yeah. Allow that bad, like that's the tension that's going to release and propel you forward. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Wasn't one of the things that he was also saying in his research, I think he was talking to individuals that were older. Yeah. Right? Or it might not have been just older, but everyone had that regret was one of the most common things.
He called out older people tend to have these kinds of regrets.
Yep.
There's 4 core regrets that he talks about: foundation regrets, boldness regrets, moral regrets, connection regrets.
So I understand the connection regrets where relationships end or are strained or are different. Moral regrets, I think I understand just from the word that those probably are
Like infidelity,
things you regret
theft.
because
Yeah.
they're like right or wrong, right?
Yeah.
They're put on that spectrum by society. Agreed are either good or bad, right? That dichotomy.
Boldness is like failure to become the person that you want to be.
Okay.
Or
Like you didn't have the
didn't accomplish this or that.
yeah. Okay. And then just say the first one again. So foundation?
Foundation regrets begin with an irresistible lure and end with an inexorable logic. So foundation regrets arise from our failures of foresight and conscientiousness. Like all deep structure regrets, they start with a choice. At some early moment, we face a series of decisions, and then we choose the wrong thing. If I'd only done this, or that kind of thing.
Okay. So those are probably more common than we think or people think. Because how often do you think, gosh, if I just had X, Y, or Z, if I had only bought some Bitcoin when it was really cheap,
right,
then I could have been a millionaire right now.
Yeah.
Like those sort of things. Or if I only would have kept playing piano every day, I would still be able to play the Do Arabesque by Debussy.
I think that's like one of the things that's in the book is somebody, he quotes a bunch of people throughout, and that's one of the things. They're like, I wish I had studied music and not given up on it. But it's real. So just like switching that from just sitting there and sulking, it's like, okay, so what are you going to do about it now?
Because you have agency.
Yeah, reminding ourselves that we do. And okay, instead of practicing for 5 hours a day, and by the third day you quit, just start at 10 or 15 minutes and just build up the habit. A more in-depth practice comes after that.
That's interesting because child 1 is taking piano lessons from my mom, music major, plays piano. Child 1 wanted to learn how to play, and she gives him a challenge every week of playing 15 or 20 minutes a day. So she just wants him to get into that routine, that idea of you don't have to eat the whole elephant. You can just have a little bit here.
Don't eat elephants.
Don't eat elephants.
They're precious, beautiful
they're so
creatures.
Beautiful. Yeah, don't eat elephants. But that's kind of the saying, right? Of how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
One thing I just thought of that I was so happy when we got home from the concert.
Yeah.
He went downstairs and started playing piano.
He did.
So I think he got energized just as much as I did from the music. And so that made my heart full and like happy.
Yeah. He was wearing his concert shirt today too. I have to say, it made my heart full that he liked The Offspring. That sounds so silly, but I grew up with The Offspring, Americana, Smash.
Yeah. I mean, they were obviously around when I was growing up and I heard them on the radio. I never owned any of their stuff, but I think I knew almost every song that they played.
They put on a good show.
Yeah, they did.
So we're talking about regrets and how to use them to make an empowered choice, to have agency, to choose action, or propel yourself with that regret, that feeling of regret.
Instead of letting it be an anchor that keeps you in place, flip that and find the power in it and launch yourself forward. That can be tricky, especially I'm talking about it in theory right now, but when I fail at something, it doesn't feel good.
No. Being able to think about regret in different ways is helpful. Like when I get to that place of worry, I think a lot of that worry, a lot of it is probably my fear of having boldness regrets. I don't want to have a regret that I didn't go after something that I want to do in life. Even like the podcast, I would probably categorize it as a boldness regret if when we were just talking and we never actually launched, probably where we would put that one. Or our project that we're working on now together, if we let that stay stagnant and never come to fruition, we would have a regret in that area. So I guess you talked about Daniel Pink saying that a powerful way to leverage your regrets is through journaling, because then you can see yourself.
Yeah, for me, when I write in my journal, it helps me process so much more clearly and so much better than if I'm simply trying to think through something in my head.
Yeah.
And so when that came out in the book, I'm like, that's right. I know stuff. Like I was all like kind of high-fiving myself, like, I figured something out and it's also in a book. It must be true.
So does he suggest any like structure to that? Or do you like go in when you're journaling and unpacking those things? Do they just kind of flow out of you? Or do you go in with the intention of unpacking something?
A lot of times I start free writing and see what's coming up. Other times when that's not working, I kind of have a little bit of a script that I go through so that I'm being more intentional about my time with paper and pen. I ask myself, okay, what's going on in my environment? What's my focus? So like what's at the top of my mind, and just start writing about that. Another thing I think about is like, what is holding me back, possibly? Like the acronym for it is SELF. So shadow, environment, my light, like what's like light and happy or whatever, or what,
Okay.
and then focus. So it spells out self. I don't know. I just came up with it one day. And so I'll go through that. So it's like, what's blocking me? And
That's your shadow.
Yeah, the shadow self kind of thing.
Okay.
The kind of like Stutz talks about or whatever.
So S is shadow. So what's blocking you?
Yeah, or like what's maybe holding me back.
Okay. And what is E again?
Environment.
Environment.
Because that might just be it. What's it like outside, or is something outside of my control affecting how I'm feeling? So
Okay.
that's outside of me.
So what's outside of you? So
Yep.
not specifically like in the house it's distracting right now, or outside it's sunny. It could be that.
It could be that.
Okay.
Yeah. It's what's outside of me, and sometimes it's like what's outside of my like whether it's raining or not is out of my control.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of what I think of.
Okay. And so then L was what again?
Think of it as my light, or the part of me that's not burdened by things that are out of my control or things that might be blocking me. The artist of me, right? If I was simply listening to or making music, that's my light, right? Pure joy.
Pure joy. So L is, yeah. So L is light, the unburdened parts of you.
Yeah.
Now what's F?
Focus.
Focus.
So what am I focused on, or what do I want to focus on? Stuff like that, because that'll help get me thinking of what are my intentions? What am I aiming at? These other things are happening, but now how do I want to focus them?
Yeah. So you put this in your journaling page?
Yeah.
Like SELF?
The first few times I did, but now this is paragraph form.
So it's kind of like your format.
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting because it's a little bit of a routine for you that you've built, and that structure. It's, if you think about habits, kind of a habit stacking.
Yeah.
Because you were building a habit of journaling, and now you're building a habit of journaling that is more focused, right? So you're using that journaling habit to really make sure you're going into each of these areas each day. Am I understanding kind of?
Yeah, it ended up being a way for me to write instead of that moment where like, I don't know what to write about or I don't know what to talk about. Somebody would say that's trying to help you keep going with your journaling practice. They're like, well, just write. I don't know what to write until you finally write something different. And so instead of me doing that, which I've done, I've gotten about 4 or 5 lines of like, it's morning, I'm tired, I don't know what to write, I don't know what I'm thinking. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, my knee is sore and I don't feel like getting out of bed, or, then you finally, after a few lines, you start writing. Thinking of like those 4 segments gave me a more productive way to write without knowing what I wanted to write about. I'm like, oh, well, these are 4 areas that are really good for me to check in with myself.
Yeah, I like that. So my journaling practice, the question that I ask is, what does my soul need to hear today? That's the question I ask. It may seem a little like, why am I asking what my soul needs to hear? But the funny thing is, I ask that question and then my pen just flows. So journaling can help with some of that, to work through and leverage the regrets that we might have. Move past that worry a lot of worry comes either from regret or it comes from the future anticipation of regret.
Regret for something you did, and worry is the anxiety of something that hasn't yet come.
Yeah. And they're just connected.
Yeah. And we're in between it.
And the dimensions that you're using, or the, what would you call them?
I said segments, I think.
Segments. Kind of help you frame that for yourself. The difficult parts, but then also the hopeful. My question of what does my soul need to hear today helps me get out of my own head and give myself advice of like that wiser self that's free of that worry. Another thing in the power of regret that I think can also be really helpful is to help normalize what it is that you're feeling, specifically in leadership. So I got up, I had to give a welcome. It was clunky and I'm beating myself up right now. And I have a regret about that, or I just feel bad and I'm worried. But then I try and take the time and I eventually get to a place where I go, but this is normal. I've seen other leaders do welcomes that were clunky, scripted, didn't go the way that they wanted them to, I'm sure, or possibly didn't go very well and they may not even realize. And so this is normal. Now what are we going to do? Do you do that at all?
I try to remember that a lot of what we see from other people is after they've done a lot of work.
Yeah.
But when I go and perform, I know that I did all that work. And so I'm carrying with me some of that baggage that you were just describing about, like when you're giving a talk. But then I forget that other people probably had that same process, their version of it. And with time and lots of practice, things get so normal that you don't even notice them, right? The more you do something, the easier it gets. And if it doesn't, that's usually when you quit, right?
Right.
As we're trying to get better at things, we're part of the process. Whereas like when you see somebody else's music, when you hear it, it's like, well, yeah, they hired a professional sound engineer. They're not sitting in their room recording on a cheap mic, or maybe they are and it still sounds great. Like lo-fi is great. I'm just, we tend to forget that other people had to go through a journey of their own, and we're so enamored with a final product that that's all you focus on because it's all you see.
To just check yourself a little bit, that can be powerful. Be like, hey, this is normal and this is why.
Yeah, and it shouldn't stop you from starting. It's like you start with what you have and you build. Like my first guitar, it's not perfect, but it plays.
Yeah.
It's only going to get better if you keep iterating.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not worth it. Sometimes you just find out like, oh, that didn't go so well and I'm not happy with the results. I don't care to try that again. At least you did it once.
Right.
I guess that kind of comes back to, it's like, take away what you can from that learning and apply it to the next thing you try.
Yeah. Give yourself compassion. I mean, you went out and you built a guitar. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I had a lot of help too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had to make the cuts. And they didn't all go right.
Right. Let me mention just one more thing from here that's standing out to me as well. Adopting a journey mindset. You just said something a little bit ago. Musician you're listening to and you're like, oh, I have to realize that they had their journey before they got here. We're all on our own journeys as well. And so to really help frame things for ourselves, even leadership, I know a lot more than I knew 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I've grown, I've learned a lot, but I'm on a leadership journey. And in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, I'll know even more. I haven't exactly arrived, but I'm learning this mindset. So instead of taking the time to worry about things that aren't going well or I didn't think went well or that I regret in the past, you learn from it and it makes me a better leader now. That is what's most important, is that I'm on a journey. That's powerful framing for anybody, right?
Yeah, it makes me think of every time you do a little something, it's like a ripple that goes out. They spread out for a long, long time. And it's generative, right? It keeps stacking. It's like compound interest. It doesn't seem like a lot at first, but then all of a sudden it's like exponential growth.
Yeah.
Each time you put in the work to push through something that's maybe hard or uncomfortable, right? The next time it's not as hard. I think it's because of like what you brought up, which is you'll remember like, oh, this is normal because the last time I did this, it felt hard too. But I did it last time and I'm doing it again. It starts to be like, this is who I am. This is what I do. I show up and I figure out what my next step is going to be by doing it anyway, doing it even if it's not comfortable.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think, did we get to the bottom of worry?
I don't think so.
Of recognizing worry and doing it anyway.
Well, how do you do it? Because like I said, you seem like somebody that's like that.
Like I get through worry?
Yeah.
I surround myself with a good network of people that are willing to listen to me. You.
I'm pretty good.
Some good thought partners and mentors, executive coach, a therapist. You all help me work through that worry monster in my brain.
Yeah.
I think that's important. Reframing is incredibly important. That's why I wanted to spend some time on the things you were talking about of reframing, using frames in journaling is a great tool. Helping check yourself. This is normal to feel this way. Other people feel this. That's more powerful for me of not necessarily last time this happened, this is normal for you, but more comparing myself to other people because I think it's the imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Real example here. Say you have to go be on public radio live.
Mm-hmm.
You don't necessarily want to. You're exhausted. And to kind of get ready and go, you have your network that you can talk to before and debrief after. But then to be able to say, other people feel this way too when they go into this. Other people don't know what is going to be asked of them. Creating that normalcy of you're not a unicorn in this. Other people feel this too is really helpful for me. That helps de-escalate my worry because it makes it not a Laura problem, but it makes it more of a, this is completely natural that you be feeling this way because other people feel this too. And they do it anyway. And you know what? You can too.
Yeah, that's something I've been trying to tell myself. If somebody else has done this before, I can probably do it too.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't that feel just empowering? Because I think it's good to check yourself and be like, this is normal and I got through it before. But to be able to compare it to other people that have done it and you're like, I want to do that and frame it in that way.
Yeah.
Doesn't that feel good or doable?
Well, I try not to fall into comparison mode because that's where I start to get a little maybe more self-doubt.
Like I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Flipping that to, instead of comparison, it's more of like self-compassion.
Yeah.
Oh, they've done that? I bet I can do that too. You know, giving yourself some grace and just acknowledging, yeah, it is kind of hard, but you know what? They've done it. I bet I can too. Give it a shot.
Mm-hmm. I even think that with the kids sometimes where I'm like, okay, other parents have sent their firstborn to high school.
Right.
I can do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Other parents have helped their children learn how to drive and been okay with them driving around.
Yeah.
You can do that too. Right?
Yeah. I don't know how our parents did it. Like now you can track your kids wherever they go now. You know,
that's true.
You LoJack your kid.
I have teen safety driving standards on my vehicle. I don't know if you knew that.
I think I did. Okay. So if somebody doesn't have a network like you, like I don't have the same career as you, professional development opportunities haven't been accessible for me.
Right.
So I'm wondering if you have some ideas. Like you talked about mentors. That's somebody that you actually talk to and you reach out to. You got a couple.
We have standing meetings and yep.
I found those in authors. Like if somebody's thinking like, well, I don't have the same network as Laura. Well, I don't either. I found my own versions of those things, and do what you can and build on it, right?
Yeah. It's not a one-way street. At least when I think about network and I think about mentors, it's not me coming to the table and just taking. I really see those relationships as, how can I help you as well? What expertise do I have that maybe I could help give you perspectives on or give you examples? Or are there people I know that I could connect you with that would be beneficial? I would say just show up when there's opportunities to connect with other people. I know it looks different for me and for my field than it does for you, Keith, but
Well, I mean, no, it's true. Create opportunities.
because you've done that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to like a mastermind or I have mentors and this and that. Find a person or a couple people and meet up for coffee weekly, right? And connect or have a Zoom call.
Yeah.
It's really helpful to be able to create a network, a support network.
Yeah. I've always wanted to be in, is it a mastermind?
Yeah.
I've always wanted to be in one of those. I don't know why.
That sounds so fun and cool.
Well, and I just think it's beneficial because it reminds me a little bit about the different writing groups I would do when I was going through dissertation with my cohort members, where we would go and we would write and we'd come together and we'd talk through our, what we were doing and where we were stuck and what was working well and lean and help and support each other. So it's kind of a mutual beneficial setup.
Yeah, you're part of a community.
Mm-hmm. That's what a mastermind kind of sounds like to me.
Yeah. Anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Do you have any recommendations to share today or things that you've been reading?
The Power of Regret, Daniel H. Pink. I'm going to page through the book now and kind of refine some of my little bookmarks that I made in the audio. Chapter 13, I think I highlighted, and that really stood out, and that was talking about self-disclosure. And then, I don't know if I mentioned, I listened to Derek Sivers' new book, Useful Not True, a while ago. I'm going to re-listen to that because it was really good. But yeah, what about you?
I have been listening to more Wiser Than Me podcasts with Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Just listened to one with Vera Wang, which was very enlightening, and then also Anne Lamott was also very good.
That Bird by Bird?
Bird by Bird.
I'm listening to that this week too. I'm saying it now so that I hold myself accountable to get through it.
Yeah, so that's good. And I will say I'm looking forward to our next puzzling and video game sesh, because you've been having me listen to Project Hail Mary. So good.
Isn't it?
And now I'm really curious about what's going to happen.
We talked about it fairly early on in one of the earlier episodes, and I'm so glad we're listening to it because it is really good.
So I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome. Should we get out of here?
I think we should.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Foundation regrets begin with an irresistible lure and end with an inexorable logic.
What does that mean?
I don't know. I'll have to Google it.